In Module 2, we're going to go deeper into the core rights, duties, and liabilities that define the relationship between the hospitality establishment and the guest. We'll discuss what the law means when it talks about inns and hotels, who has what responsibilities, and how legal liability works in practice. We will also explore the important concept of innkeeper's strict liability, which is one of the oldest rules in hospitality law, and we will examine what is actually considered part of hotel premises for legal purposes. By the end of this module, you should be able to identify legal risks in day-to-day hotel operations, understand your duties as an operator, and know the rights your guests have and don't have. 1. Inns and hotels, legal definitions. Before we can discuss rights and duties, we need to be clear about the terminology. Historically, an inn was a place that provided lodging, meals, and care for travelers and their horses. The law developed specific rules for innkeepers because travelers were vulnerable, they were far from home, carrying valuables, and often had little choice but to accept whatever accommodation was available. A hotel, in modern legal terms, is an establishment offering lodging to the public for a price, with certain services such as housekeeping, reception, and sometimes meals. The key distinction from other lodging types, such as private rentals or hostels, is that hotels generally have a duty to accept guests who are willing to pay and comply with house rules, unless there is a lawful reason to refuse. 1.1 Why definitions matter. These legal definitions matter because certain laws, especially those about liability for guest property, apply specifically to inns and hotels. If you run an establishment that fits the legal definition of a hotel, you may be bound by these laws even if you call yourself a guest house or a resort. 2. Rights and duties of the proprietor. As the owner or manager of a hotel, you are not simply running a business, you are a custodian of people's personal safety, privacy, and property. Let's break down the main legal duties of the proprietor. 2.1 Duty to provide accommodation. If a guest arrives with a confirmed booking, the proprietor must provide the agreed accommodation unless a lawful reason for refusal exists. Lawful reasons may include: the guest is unable or unwilling to pay. The guest poses a safety risk to others. The guest is engaging in illegal activity. Turning away a guest without a lawful reason can lead to breach of contract claims and potential penalties under anti-discrimination laws. 2.2 Duty of care for guest safety. Proprietors have a legal obligation to take reasonable care to prevent injury to guests. This includes maintaining safe premises, no broken stairs, faulty elevators, or exposed wiring. Complying with fire safety laws, fire alarms, extinguishers, evacuation plans. Providing adequate security against foreseeable risks like theft or assault. Failure to meet this duty can result in negligence claims. 2.3 Duty to safeguard guest property. This is where innkeepers' liability laws come in. In many jurisdictions, the proprietor is responsible for the loss of or damage to guest property while on the premises, unless certain exceptions apply. We will go deeper into this under strict liability. 2.4 Duty of non-discrimination. Hotels generally cannot refuse service based on race, religion, nationality, gender, disability, or other protected characteristics. This is enforced under anti-discrimination laws in many countries. Exceptions apply if the refusal is based on conduct, not identity, for example, if the guest is drunk and disorderly. 3. Duties of the guest. Just as the proprietor has legal duties, the guest also has obligations under hospitality law. 3.1 Duty to pay. The most obvious duty, the guest must pay the agreed price for the accommodation and any additional agreed services. Failure to pay can lead to the proprietor exercising a lien, the legal right to retain the guest's belongings until payment is made, if permitted by law. 3.2 Duty to comply with house rules. House rules may include checkout times, no smoking policies, dress codes in certain areas, and quiet hours. If reasonable and clearly communicated, these rules are enforceable. 3.3 Duty not to damage property. Guests are liable for damage they cause to the property, whether intentionally or through negligence. Hotels can recover repair costs through charges to the guest account or legal action. 4. Rights of an innkeeper. It's not all obligations. Proprietors also have certain legal rights to protect their business and maintain order. 4.1 Right to refuse service. a proprietor can refuse accommodation if the guest refuses to pay or provide a deposit. The guest is intoxicated, disruptive, or threatening. The guest has a contagious illness that could endanger others. The guest intends to use the room for illegal purposes. This right must be exercised fairly and lawfully to avoid discrimination claims. 4.2 Right to enforce payment. If a guest refuses to pay for services rendered, the innkeeper may have the right to retain the guest luggage until payment, lien. Pursue legal recovery through civil claims. 4.3 Right to remove a guest. If a guest breaches the house rules, behaves inappropriately, or refuses to pay, the proprietor can legally evict them from the premises, often with the assistance of law enforcement if necessary. 5. The hotel premises, legal scope. The term hotel premises in law usually covers more than just the guest room. It can include reception areas, hallways and staircases, restaurants and bars operated by the hotel, recreational areas like pools or gyms, parking lots, if owned or controlled by the hotel. Why does this matter? Because liability for accidents, theft, or other incidents often depends on whether the incident occurred on hotel premises. 6. Innkeeper strict liability. One of the most distinctive features of hospitality law is the doctrine of strict liability for guest property. 6.1 What it means. Under strict liability, the proprietor is responsible for loss or damage to a guest's property regardless of fault, unless specific exceptions apply. This rule dates back centuries, intended to protect travelers who had no choice but to entrust their belongings to the innkeeper. 6.2 Modern application. Today, many jurisdictions still apply a modified version of strict liability. For example, the hotel is liable up to a certain monetary limit for valuables unless they were deposited in a secure safe. Liability may not apply if the loss was caused by the guest's negligence. Some laws require hotels to post notices explaining these rules. 6.3 Exceptions to liability. Common exceptions include loss caused by the guest's own negligence, e.g., leaving the door unlocked. Loss caused by events outside the hotel's control, e.g., natural disasters. Loss of items not usually brought by guests in normal circumstances, e.g., commercial goods. 7. How these rules apply in practice. Let's bring it all together with an example. A guest books a room online, pays in advance, and arrives with several pieces of luggage containing expensive electronics. The hotel's duty: provide the booked room, ensure safety, and safeguard property. If the luggage is stolen from the locked room, the hotel may be liable under strict liability, unless an exception applies. If the guest refused to use the in-room safe or failed to lock the door, the hotel might have a defense. Closing summary. In Module 2, we have covered the legal definitions of inns and hotels, the rights and duties of both proprietors and guests, the rights of an innkeeper to refuse service, enforce payment, and remove guests, the scope of what counts as hotel premises, the historical and modern meaning of innkeeper strict liability. Together with Module 1, you now have a comprehensive overview of the legal framework that governs hospitality operations.